What's up, freaks? This was brought to you by River. River's a Bitcoin company built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners the right way. There's no trusted third parties. They build all their infrastructure. They have free DCA because they know it's the best way to buy Bitcoin. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, you want to mine Bitcoin, you want to send Bitcoin over the Lightning Network, you want to plug into their Lightning Network API. If you're a developer, they're building all these tools for you. They also encourage self-custody. Again, they're Bitcoiners. They want to provide an on-ramp for you and then teach you and encourage you to take control of your own Bitcoin. And they're doing this. It's a beautiful company. If you do hold Bitcoin on the exchange, you can know for sure, since they don't rely on any third parties, they don't lend your Bitcoin out, they don't speculate with your Bitcoin. Your Bitcoin is held in a multi-sig wallet with 100% reserves. Okay? So go to river.com/TFTC, take advantage of the no-fee DCA. You set up your dollar cost average. You don't pay any fees on those buys. If you're a developer, they have their Lightning Network Services API that you can build on. You can send over Lightning. You can mine via River as well. You may have your exchange. You may be comfortable with it, but have you tried River yet? It's a question you have to ask yourself. If the answer is no, go try it. That's where all the Bitcoiners are hanging out. That's where I get my Bitcoin as well. River.com/TFTC. Thank you guys for listening. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, set the notifications up as well. We're going to be putting out a lot of content this year. If you want to subscribe to the podcast feed as well, if you're not around your computer or not listening on YouTube, but you want to catch the podcast on the podcasting feeds, subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And if you want to learn more about Bitcoin, I write a newsletter almost daily during the week. Go to tftc.io, subscribe on the website, and you'll get pure signal on Bitcoin, macroeconomics, geopolitics, whatever tickles my fancy that day. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for supporting the show. If you can subscribe, rate, review, goes a long way. We're trying to blow this up in 2023. Enjoy the rip.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
House with a sauna.
Dope. So they got a heated sauna, like the steam sauna, and that's next to the salt pool, which is in front of the pickleball court. I played pickleball for the first time yesterday.
How was it? I've never played pickleball.
I'm addicted.
It seems like an addicting sport.
I played a little tennis growing up, love ping pong, and it just sits firmly right in between those two.
So you're saying the Meat Mafia guys have the best bachelor pad in the Austin area?
For now, they're tenants. But no, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I'll be there tonight. This is my last night in the Central Texas, Austin area.
And you've been here for a while.
God, Lord, yeah. Got here a week ago tomorrow.
Yeah.
So.
Where are you from originally?
East Tennessee, a little town called Athens that is halfway between Knoxville and Chattanooga. Most people know those two cities. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're doing a lot of Bitcoin mining up in northern Tennessee by Pall Mall.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Power's, pretty efficient in East Tennessee. We got TVA, a lot of nuclear energy produced, and I would imagine, I've been to Bitcoin Park over in Nashville a couple times.
It's an incredible place.
Oh, it's so cool. Yeah, it's a neat spot. Matt and crew have done a great job. Are you involved with that?
Not directly, tangentially.
Yeah, sure.
I was there 2 weeks ago now.
Okay.
At their Mining and Energy Summit, participating. I was there the month before. I forget what that was about, the focus of that event. But yeah, I've been to Bitcoin Park like 3 times in the last 5 months. So.
Yeah. It's a sweet setup. I met Slim over there. They did one of those micro summits.
That's what I was there in December.
Okay.
They did another micro summit there.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, it's a neat spot.
And that's where we first met, was in Kerrville.
We met in Kerrville. That's right.
Yeah.
Coming up on a year. When was that? June of last year?
Could have been June, because I would have been in Jersey. So it was like, I think it would have been like...
Maybe earlier.
Yeah, a little bit earlier.
May. Yeah, because the Colorado deal he put together was...
July.
And then Georgia was September. So...
Yeah. And we were on a panel together.
Well, I was moderating the panel.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep you and Slim going, you know. That was fun. No, it was good to meet you. That was a drinking from the fire hose kind of day for me, for sure. Mary Kerr was there. Trying to think of who else.
Jimmy Song.
Jimmy Song was there. He's a cool dude to meet.
He is. He's doing a cool thing right now. He's traveling the globe with his family.
Is he?
Yeah.
Where are they now?
I don't know where they are. Exactly. I think they might be somewhere in the Middle East. But no, it's funny. I saw them on the first leg of their trip for their leg start at the Riga Bitcoin, the Baltic Honey Badger Conference. And I was on the same flight as them from New York to Riga. And it was hilarious seeing him and his wife and their 6 children home alone through the airport to make the flight.
6 kids. Wow.
Goals.
Good for him.
So, I mean, the reason we're here to talk about what you're doing, which is something scares some people. It scared my wife, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, fair enough.
So I'm gonna come back with a bunch of skincare products that are made from pig lard.
Well, we don't have a bunch of products, but you don't need a bunch when they work really good.
Yeah, so how'd you get into this? What do you do? I guess I'm sitting down with Charles Mayfield from Farrow.
Yeah.
It's the Northeast.
It's all good, dude.
It's the Northeast accent coming out.
I appreciate it.
How'd you get into this?
And the short version of the long story is I made a transition from health and fitness in a gym to promoting health and fitness through food, and that attracted me to farming. And then I had the shit. Can we curse on this show?
Yes.
My apologies. I got a really bad sunburn in 2019. Having a decade plus experience in sort of health, nutrition, and seeing people make dietary changes and have physical changes manifest, lose weight, this goes away, various. We were talking about certain skin conditions this morning before we hopped on, and so anyway, I had this experience of being experimental and also really paying attention to to what happens. And so yeah, I got really sunburned, Marty, and came home. My now ex and I were going through our divorce, so sort of house is empty. I'm sunburned. I live in a small town, really small town, so all the drugstores are closed. It's one of those late nights, and I have over a decade experience cooking, healthy cooking and lifestyle stuff, and I had a jar of lard in my refrigerator that I had rendered from my pigs that we raised. We raised pastured pork, beef, chicken, on a micro scale, but probably about 45, 50 customers that sort of leaned into us for meat. Anyway, yeah, I got really bad sunburn, and in sort of an act of desperation and trial and error, I lathered up with this stuff, and a couple days later the sunburn was gone. That was really cool, but I never peeled. And that's, you learn to, when you're health and nutrition, you sort of, when something happens, you pause and you pay attention, you start taking notes. And so, yeah, I watched my skin for probably 2 or 3 weeks, thinking at some point, the snake's got to peel. Never happened. And so started experimenting with making skincare products out of pastured pig fat. And here we are, 2.5, 3 years later.
Wait, so 2 questions. Number 1, how'd you get the sunburn? And number 2, this act of desperation to start rubbing lard on you, was there something that you've heard in the past, like, it's good for your skin, or were you just like, oh, this looks like it would be soothing?
Well, so what was I doing? We started a hemp company in 2019. In fact, part of our skincare bundle is we use, I call it a skincare elixir. So we're sort of highlighting the benefits of CBD ingestion as it relates to skin. But we were in the middle of the throes of jumping into the almost like the gold rush, but the hemp rush of 2019. And we had again, I'll never forget the day, on July the 4th, Go America, on July 4th, we had planted about 20 acres of hemp. We ended up planting almost 300, but in that day, we got 20 acres in the ground, drip taped, the whole 9 yards, so ready to rock. That evening, we flipped the switch on to irrigate it, and the irrigation's not performing. And so me and one guy stayed up all night fixing the irrigation. Otherwise, the sun comes up the next day and 20 acres of hemp's dead. Like, it needs a lot of water early. So anyway, you just forget to go back to the house or put sunscreen on or any of that stuff. And so I was out in the fields for 2 straight days, effectively. And so that's how I got sunburned. And then I'm almost 49 years old, Marty. But I grew up in small town Tennessee, but we would go to the beach every year. My mom's from Mobile. And I have fond memories of my mom buying aloe vera and putting it in the refrigerator.
I do as well.
Right? And because if you're sunburned, it's cool. And so there were a bunch of things that pointed me to, maybe I should try this pig fat that's in the refrigerator because it's cool and it'll be soothing. And so yeah. And at some level, it's kind of intuitive, right? I mean, like, I know enough about pigs. Like, we train surgeons on pigs. I don't know if you knew that or not.
No, I didn't know that.
Pigs are so genetically similar to human beings that we train our surgeons on them. And Phil Ovadia, you know Phil, Dr. Ovadia? He's got a great book, I Fix Hearts. I know Phil very well. He's a heart surgeon. And
I've heard of that book.
Yeah, it's great book. Stay Off My Operating Table is the title of his book. But anyway, I've known Phil for a long time. I was on his podcast early in Farrow's journey, and they're asking about this, asking about that. I was like, Phil, you train, he's a heart surgeon. I was like, you train on pigs? It's like, actually, I used the valve from a pig heart 2 weeks ago to repair the valve in a human heart. So the biology there is so aligned.
Yeah, this is might make people a bit queasy, but my brother played college lacrosse, and he once took a very hard shot to the nether regions and had to get a surgery down there. And now he's part pig. Oh, nice. They sewed up one of his guys with some pig skin.
That again, my condolences and
they still work.
Yeah. That's so. Yeah, the point is, pigs are four-legged humans in many respects. So if you raise a healthy, happy, I've been cooking with lard for a number of years. Again, this is the background in sort of Paleolithic nutrition, things of that nature. So there were a lot of signs pointing to why wouldn't you try it? You ever been hunting?
I'm embarrassed to say no.
Oh, that's okay. I grew up hunting, and again, you think about all the things that sort of go through your head that point you towards a jar of lard in your refrigerator. If you've ever gutted and cleaned a deer after you've hunted, if you don't have gloves on, which why would you wear gloves? You're covered in like this sinewy, subcutaneous fat because of skinning the animal out. We've all got this fat. And so there were a lot of signs that sort of pointed me towards give it a whirl. And I mean, hell, it worked. So.
And you made a whole company out of it.
Well, yeah. So that was in 19. It took about 2 years. So it's funny. So yeah, we say at Farrow, the lard works in mysterious ways. So I, had this little epiphany, and I didn't peel. And so what do? You go to the internet machine, and how do I make cream out of fat? And so a lot of the early stuff we did was, for your listeners that don't know, go to any drugstore and buy any cream off the shelf. First ingredient's water. Then there's another 40 ingredients. Of which will include a fat, and it will include an emulsifier because you have to bind the water to the oil and water don't want to mix, so you got to emulsify them. And so, again, I had this epiphany moment. So I probably spent, Marty, 6 months in my kitchen emulsifying lard with water. I'd use beeswax. I used a couple of different emulsifiers. Just tinkering. I spent my entire childhood in my dad's workshop and my mom's kitchen. So I'm really at home and happy when my hands are busy. And so, yeah, I was just playing around. I could never keep the early creams from not going rancid. I'd make this lusciously amazing cream, and 5-6 days later, it's full of mold and bacteria. So add antimicrobial essential oils, add this, add that. Still couldn't keep them shelf stable. Put them in the fridge. And it finally occurred to me, two things occurred to me. One is I'm not a chemist, and I really, I've got this 10-year, 15-year background in telling people if you can't pronounce the name of it, don't eat it. So again, looking at these labels, like I don't want to research which paraben-based, preservatives. So the light bulb went off again. It's the water that's feeding the mold and bacteria. Get rid of the water. So at that point, kicked the water out, brought in some beef tallow for your listeners that don't know that. So the all-natural skincare market, which is still just a fraction of the overall skincare industry, is dominated by beef tallow. So beef tallow is the rendered kidney fat from a cow or steer or bull. And I love tallow. We use tallow in our products. At room temperature, tallow is hard. It's very balmy. And so at room temperature, lard is very creamy. And so I know you've opened sort of the stuff I brought you today, but so I kicked the water out and brought some tallow in and started playing with like the ratios, because people like a creamy. They like cream. And so yeah, started, kicked the water. You've cooked bacon before, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What do you do when you finish cooking the bacon? You take the drippings and you pour them in a cup?
Yeah, we have a nice copper cup that we pour.
Oh, big time.
That we pour our bacon grease into.
And then it can sit there, right, for weeks, months, and not go bad. There's no water in there. It's just fat.
Yeah, we let it build up.
Oh, yeah. Actually, the best part, you let it build up, and then you've got like this layered effect of like, well, here's the bacon drippings from a month ago, and here's last week, and here's this morning. So, our products don't smell like bacon.
No, that unscented.
They're unscented. We have a scented product, but yeah. So I don't. Where do we start here with this last question?
Why you decide to put lard on you?
Oh yeah. Well, it works.
Yeah. Well, and if you go to your site, farrow.life.
Yep.
It seems like there's a lot of science behind it too. I mean, we talked about like the pig being very similar to human bodies. Surgeons practice on pigs, heart valves, testicle encasings, whatever it may be. And that's one thing. You say the skin of a pig is that's human skin is most similar, if you're looking at another animal, to pig skin.
Yes. So pigs metabolize vitamins A, E, and D mechanistically the same way humans do. Sun exposure and proper diet and, environment. And they store those vitamins in their subcutaneous fat, which is where we render for lard. And it's in many respects, it's hyper intuitive what I'm doing, and at the same time, everyone's like, "What the hell, man? You want me to put what on my face?" So, it's pigs are an amazing animal. I've spent a little over 6 years in the regenerative farming side of the house. Farrow really represents a convergence of healthy eating lifestyle, healthy farming lifestyle. I would even add into that sort of preservative chemical. Mm-hmm. So all of that sort of converges, and the products are amazing. So I've been in town. I'm in town we just wrapped up the John Bush's Live Free Academy thing. So I was presenting there. I'm hanging out with you today, and back home tomorrow. But I've been spreading the lard, man. That's why we're here.
It seems very important because you mentioned, like, as a nutritionist, you recommend don't eat anything you can't pronounce. And similarly, like that's one thing I think I've become more attuned to, like probably the last 5 years, because I go to the beach every summer, spend 3 months there from Memorial Day to Labor Day. I'm a pale Irishman who does not react well to the sun. Similar to that, I get a base burn. I call it my base burn every year.
Yep.
Like early June, I peel, get a bad sunburn. I don't like to put sunscreen on, even though my family, it's been beaten into us. You got to do it. You're going to get melanoma if you don't. It runs in our family. And I've become convinced in the last 5 years it's actually the lathering of the sunscreen that is, and all the chemicals involved in it that are probably worse for you. And just figuring out a way to protect your skin in a better way. And one of the big memes right now is like seed oils. If you stop eating seed oils, your skin will not burn as much, if at all. And then now with something like this, you were using the lard to sort of cool down your summer. Does it prevent it at all as well?
Well, you can get in a lot of trouble in my line of work making claims about your products.
Okay.
But listen, when we built the website, I had a products liability attorney review all the copy, right? Because you can say soothes, you can't say heals, you can say relieves, you can't say treats. It's all this vernacular out there.
In your experience, what has happened?
What's that?
In your experience, have you had a bad? Maybe that's the question. Have you had a bad sunburn since?
Well, so I guess the original. No, I have not. We have a whole lot of stuff that kind of sort of compounds up into sunburn. So in the example of if you've got a lot of Irish genes, no question, you're way more sensitive. I've got a lot of Spanish blood in me, and so those are two different lineages of sun exposure, right? I tell people to generally be smart. Our ancestors, hundreds of years ago, didn't have sunscreen. They were also smart enough to stay the hell out of the sun from 11:30 in the afternoon until 2 or 3. I'm not saying they weren't working or doing something, but they weren't out. They certainly weren't out with their shirt off by the pool, right? That's a fairly new human phenomenon. We're totally addicted with like the sun and the lifestyle and getting that copper tan. I get all that, but just people being smarter about staying hydrated, first and foremost. The rule of thumb for your listeners out there is if your shadow is taller than you are, say it another way, if your shadow is shorter than you are, then that you are at a time of day and a place on the earth where you can get sunburned.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah,
I like
it's
that.
a good rule of thumb because you're not always, the sun's not always going to burn you if it's low enough in the sky. Like right now, it's winter here. The sun really never gets high enough in the sky for you to get the intensity required to give you a sunburn. And so that's some helpful information. If your shadow is shorter than you are, then you are in sunburn eligibility zone. I don't use sunscreen anymore. They're made with seed oils. They're made with preservatives. This is a phenomenon. So the microbiome is another phenomenon we're learning about. It's sort of the new frontier. All the little bugs and critters that live on and in our skin. Well, they're there for a reason. We're not necessarily sure the reason, but we've co-evolved with this 5 to 7 pounds of microbiotic creatures living in and on our skin. And again, my creams, when I mixed them with water, they would get moldy and grow bacteria. Okay, well, if I have to put something in a cream to keep bacteria from growing, and then I spread that same cream on my skin, I'm effectively napalming these microorganisms that live on my skin. Why are they there? Well, I don't know, but they're there, and we've been around for a while. Why do we have such an increased incidence of skin cancer, melanoma, sunburn in the same 30 to 40 year time period where the SPF level on sunscreens has quintupled? Mm-hmm. When I grew up, again, I was spending time at the beach with my family. I can still smell it. I can close my eyes and smell the Panama Jack, banana boat, like coconut smelling suntan oil. When I was a kid, there was no such thing as sunscreen.
It's just oil.
There was number 4, number 6, number 8, number 10, and number 12 oil. And the higher the number, the more the protection you had. So the darker you wanted your skin, my dad was a number 6 Panama Jack. And I can still smell it. But so, that was 35 years ago. And look at the constant upgrades of SPF, sun protection factor.
Yeah, the Irish are like SPF 50 maximalists.
I'm sure they are. They should be. They should be. But as sunscreen use has gone up, as sun protection factor has gone up, so have the incidence of skin cancer. That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's funny because it is this like meme in the Irish beach going community that like you need to put it on, you're gonna get cancer. Like my grandmother died of melanoma, and that freaks obviously my family out when they look at all of us. They're like, "You gotta lather up. She got skin cancer for being in the sun, going to the beach." It's like For most of my life, I was like, "Yeah, lather up." And now, more recently, as I become more attuned to,
just be smarter.
Yeah.
I mean, here's some advantages today. We've got all this tactical, lightweight clothing that can block
SPF,
the sun.
That's what I do, the SPF shirts. There's
yeah.
The fishing shirts.
Or just wearing hats and just being smart. I mean, look, you need your 15 minutes of sun exposure every day, just like the rest of us. You might only need about 10 or 15. Some other people with darker skin, for me, it's maybe 30.
I enjoy a couple hours, though.
Absolutely.
Right.
But enjoy it wisely.
Yeah.
Instead of SPF creams, put on a tactical shirt that's lightweight, breathable. You can go in and out of the water. I mean, we've got so many tools at our exposure now, at our disposal, to allow us to be smarter about our relationship with the sun.
Yeah. No, not only the sun, just like going back to like, I don't want to say vanilla, but like just typical skincare. Like everybody rubbing all these Olay potions on themselves. And I was telling you, I haven't, with my eczema, like I really can't wear deodorant because it flares it up. And you look at the back of like Old Spice and it's the same thing. You can't read half the ingredients.
All of them.
Yeah.
It's if you're buying it off so we make these creams sort of fresh, like ready to order. And I've sort of done the math. We can scale, we'd like to scale our company, but we can. I mean, look around. We've figured logistics out. You can click a button and order from Amazon or Uber Eats, or I mean, you know, like it's there. Lickety split. So the logistics side of the house we've got figured out globally, really. But you know, so you can order a product from us on Monday. It might not ship till Thursday, but what you're paying for with supporting a brand like Farrow is, you know, we're going to hand make this. You know, it's going to get to you as fresh as possible. I mean, you can eat our creams. This is kind of fun. We have fun with that. You know, there's lard, tallow, leaf lard, honey, essential oils in our scented. We've got our own little proprietary blend of everything. But you know, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be putting stuff on your skin you wouldn't eat anyway, because that's what you're doing. Your skin is your second stomach. It's your largest organ.
Yeah. So what's happening when you put this stuff on, whether it be traditional skin creams or the Farrow stuff? Like, why should somebody actually use skincare products as opposed to not using it all? Yep,
great question. So, and you know, again, if anybody asks me, I tell them make sure you're getting enough water. You know, try to remove the pro-inflammatory foods from your diet. You know, the seed oil, you mentioned seed oils earlier. Seed oils are highly oxidative. They have a really whacked out ratio between omega-6 and omega-3. For your listeners that don't know, omega-3 is the anti-inflammatory fatty acid. Omega-6 is the pro-inflammatory. You don't get one without the other. They come in tandem. However, the more stressed an animal is, or the more refined various seed or plant-based oils are, then you have a huge ratio. Wild-caught salmon, which is, you know, in the food world, is propped up as a highly nutritious form of fat, has a great ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids. Pasture-raised, regeneratively raised beef has a much better ratio than the industrial feedlot-raised beef, just because, again, the stresses that the feedlot can put on the animal, among other factors. But yeah, we want to keep omega-3 as high as possible and omega-6 as low as possible.
And if you're not using skincare, does that ratio get out of whack?
Well, so the skincare industry, this is another one of the intuitive beauties of our product. The skincare industry is a relatively new creation. I would make the argument that 200 years ago, we'll just go back 200 years, which, what do you figure, is that 4 generations, 5 generations tops? Okay, so 200 years ago, 99.9% of the people that inhabited this planet on a weekly, certainly monthly basis, certainly if they were an adult, had their hands elbow deep in the carcass of an animal on a weekly, monthly basis, because somebody'd go out and hunt and gather. Someone would bring it home and have to skin it and prepare it for consumption. And you know, you can go back thousands of years. This has been happening for thousands of years, but certainly 200 years ago, this is pre-refrigeration. You know, you had to get that meat prepared quickly and cooked quickly, or salted and cured quickly. And so, yeah, everybody was elbows deep in animal fat.
Yeah.
Except the elitist of the elite of the elite. I was, you know, again at this conference here this past weekend, and there was probably 400 people there. And that same question, fielding the same question, I was like, 200 years ago, 399 of the 400 people that are in this room would have had their hands they're covered in animal fat. And then we cooked with it. I mean, if you think about all the situations where our skin 200 years ago came in contact with animal fat, we didn't have sunscreens 200 years ago. If it was 12:30 in the afternoon, Marty, 200 years ago, if you were outside, you had a hat on, you were fully like long sleeves, working out in the fields or working in the garden or working in the woods. It's a fairly new concept of like taking half your clothes off and hanging out by a swimming pool. But the point is, the skincare industry has evolved, and its need has increased because fewer and fewer people come in contact with animal fat on a regular basis.
This gets back to like the microbiome living on your skin.
So the skincare world is dominated by three things. First and foremost, water. And again, I will challenge any one of your listeners, go into any drugstore, anywhere in the country, there's not a product on the shelf that's first ingredient is not water. Unless it's a oil-based serum that's, but your deodorants, your shampoos, your any skincare cream, medicated and not, if it's a cream, the first ingredient's water. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then on the other end of that is an oil. So you got water and oil. And if you're in the skincare industry, the oils that they're using are the cheapest, nastiest, in some cases the most widely available unusable derivative from the petroleum industry, And then in the middle of all that are all these chemicals so it's water, it's seed oil, plant oil based fats, and then in the middle are all these chemicals that preserve
and bind them.
Yeah, bind them and preserve them. And we don't really know what some of these endocrine disrupting parabens is one that comes under constant scrutiny and should. We don't know the impact long term of these compounds on our skin. The consumer protection side of skincare, the foundation for that started in 1938. It's called the Food and Cosmetics Act. And this is sort of the precursor to the FDA and a lot of other stuff. But so in 1938, they came out with this legislation sort of governing consumer protection. And at the time, the only ingredients in skincare that required pre-market testing for safety were color additives. Now, this is 1938, right? So we're getting pretty good at making diesel gas and pulling it out of the ground and all that. But from a consumer derivative product petroleum industry, we're in our infant stages, right? So, but that's the preeminent act governing consumer protection for skincare. They updated the act in 1974, excluded cosmetics from the act. Right. So the legislation on the books governing consumer protection in the skincare industry was written in 1938, includes color additives as the only requirement for pre-market testing. All right. And so think about what we've been able to do, technologically speaking, with all these hexanes and gas-derived things in terms of all the stuff we can turn gasoline into, right?
These mics, everything.
90% of the room we're sitting in is, 100% of the room we're sitting in is petroleum derived, because you're burning it to mine something or whatever the case may be. I mean, the carbon society we live in, I get a little out of sorts with the environmentalists sometimes with like this zero carbon neutral footprint. I'm like, listen, that's crazy.
It's not possible.
Let's just get really efficient at using these amazing assets we have, because solar power is only going to get us so far. And it's awesome, and we should pursue it. Nuclear power is amazing.
Yes.
If you follow the work of like a Robert Lomberg or any of these sort of global economies-based smart people that can look at the climate and look at carbon and look at population, like what are the real issues we're facing today. I'm getting a little tangentially off track here, I feel like, but
I think what you're getting to is like the conflation of carbon production with pollution. You should really focus on the pollution and being as efficient as possible.
Well, yeah, and
waste. It's a good thing that the environmentalists do is they conflate it. They say, if you come out and you're like, no, I think hydrocarbons are good, but we should be efficient with it. Yeah, like I'm a pro fossil fuels guy that hates pollution and waste. I like to consider myself an environmentalist, but if I mention that I'm pro fossil fuel, and I can't be an environmentalist.
You have to be pro fossil fuel if you're pro human,
right?
And you know, it's like well, this drives me nuts. You have to be pro fossil fuel if you're pro human. We have an obligation to be as efficient and smart with these amazing gifts we've been given. I like to look at these. So I'm in the farming world, you know, and I don't know if you've read Sacred Cows, a good book for your listener. Rob Wolf and Diana Rogers sort of cover. Cows get a lot of flack. Okay, they're ruining the environment, according to people. Some people, they're ruining the environment because they burp and fart, right? And that emits methane into the air. And listen, we live in a day and age now where we're addicted to, air quotes, the science, right? Well, let me give you everyone in the audience a science lesson. Science is amazing. And if you reduce a complicated process or system to a fraction of its cycle and use science to analyze a piece of that, you're not being honest with the science or your audience. And so cows emit methane. And if you follow that methane across a 10-year cycle, it goes up into the atmosphere and eventually turns into water. And that is a closed loop system that takes roughly 10 years to happen. Well, if you analyze the first 2 months of that 10-year closed loop system, all you're talking about is emissions from a cow. Not this is part of a 10-year life cycle of this animal building and enhancing the atmosphere.
Yeah, and not only the atmosphere, but even the soil on the ground. Like the regenerative farming movement has really highlighted the benefit of grazing cattle and their ability to re-green areas.
The deepest, richest soils in our country that we've about mined down to nothing is in the Corn Belt. This is the Iowa, Nebraska. If you look at where we grow all of our crops, you're talking about soil that was built over millennia by herding bison, followed by migratory birds. And so if I could summarize what we try to do with regenerative farming, it's just mimicking a system like that, which is short, high-intense grazing periods, followed by long periods of rest, right? And so that's a lot of what the holistic land management ethos of like an Allan Savory or the regenerative farming ethos of like a White Oak Pastures or Polyface, what they're trying to do is mimic and also leverage natural systems. So in a natural system, you've got predators, right? The wolves, the bears. That's what keeps herding animals together tight and also moves them, pushes them around. So now we have modern lightweight polywire fencing and portable electric energizers and all these. So we effectively become the predator, the gas pedal and the brake for these animals. And the coolest part about that is this is a situation where you take a natural system and enhance it, like enhance the efficiency. Mother Nature is very efficient.
Yeah, less investment and
that's right.
Heavy industrial like machines that are necessary. Like the white oaks who who runs that? His name's
Will Harris.
Will Harris.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a Rogan episode where they show how his regenerative farming affects the water system compared to the farms like adjacent to him.
So the most compelling story about White Oak, so you're familiar with some of these plant-based meat companies, right? And they claim like zero carbon emission, blah, 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 or carbon emissions. And so so there's an independent third-party lab that did the carbon emissions program test analysis for Beyond Meat, Beyond Burger, whatever. And I may be getting this wrong, but one of these plant-based meat companies that claims, carbon neutral. Well, so Will Harris had that same third-party lab come down. I think they spent like 6 or 8 months at White Oak measuring how much carbon was either emitted or sequestered from his beef, right? And what did they learn? They learned that every pound of beef that rolls off the shelf at White Oak is actually a net carbon sequester. Huh. So they're net putting more carbon back in the soil. So for your listeners, we've got carbon dioxide in the air, and plants breathe carbon dioxide and turn that into photosynthesis. They bring all that together and turn it into grass. And so, cows come by and mow the grass. And when they mow the grass, they move on, but that grass has to regrow. And so if you think about like a pasture for your listeners, so let's say you've got people associate it with like their lawns, but when we say grasses, we're talking about feet of pastured grass. So imagine like 3 feet of grass above the ground. Well, there's also 3 feet of grass below the ground. It's all these roots and which are carbon, right? It's carbon that's been pulled out of the air, turned into roots, and stretch and stretch and stretch. So when that cow comes along and takes that 3-foot plant and turns it into a 1-foot plant, mows it, well, here's what happens. So plants want symbiosis, they want homeostasis, and so a plant that's gone from 3 feet to 1 foot will now lop off the roots under the ground. It will take that carbon, that living, and it will store it. It will get rid of it. It'll shuck it off because it has to reestablish equilibrium. There's only a foot of biomass above the ground. I need to shuck off. Otherwise, I'm out of balance.
Commensurate amount.
That's right. I have to come back into balance, right? Mm-hmm. And these plants are so smart. And so then what does it do? Well, I got to grow again. And so then it pulls more carbon out of the air and builds more roots. And you just rinse and repeat that. So technology, excuse me, allows us to take a natural system like herding bison and migratory birds and ramp that, stack that up more and more and more. Like we can control the rest that this little spot of land gets. And if we have a lot of rain, we can put the cows back on it faster. If it's drier, let it rest a little bit. But you get to evaluate and play puppeteer to how fast can we regenerate and build topsoil.
Yeah. And then the positive externalities from treating that soil correctly, doing it the way it's been done for millennia. Like again, going back to like the water, like it acts as this natural filtration system for water systems as well, where
absolutely
places like Iowa, Nebraska, where you're completely decimating the soil. Not only do you have bad soil, but you probably have bad water as well because it's not being filtered as much. And
there's a bunch of published data out there that we will run out of topsoil. I think the year is 2060. So that's like less than a generation from now. And if we run out of topsoil, we're done. Sorry, you're done. So we've got, I forget how many cubic tons of topsoil that washes down the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico every year. We've killed We've killed effectively a swath of the Gulf of Mexico the size of Rhode Island with all of the runoff pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. Well, again, there's a lot of synergy between the lack of consumer protection and complete missing the boat between farming. Glyphosate, that's the one that gets all the press, this Roundup Ready glyphosate. Okay, so glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. It's 51% of the recipe. Okay, and when they ran the test to see if this was safe for humans, they only tested glyphosate, not
the other 49%.
The concoction that is Roundup. They tested glyphosate. They do the same thing with vaccines. They test the standalone, Anyway.
Not really indexing for the combination of all
They don't count for that. And what does glyphosate, what does Roundup do?
Kills weeds.
Kills plants, not just weeds. It's like napalm. It kills almost anything that's photosynthetically inclined, we'll say. Okay, so one of the early conclusions they drew is because humans don't metabolize energy through photosynthesis, we're blocking this photosynthetic system, right? That's what kills the plant. So humans don't do that. So it's intuitively safe for humans, right? Now we'll do all our tests anyway, but we're just going to test glyphosate. We're not going to test Roundup. But here's again, we're at the precipice of this from a scientist and pointing attention towards it. But all those little bugs, again, that live on and in our skin, that's exactly how they metabolize energy and thrive. They have a photosynthetic process that they rely on to survive. Some of them, not all of them. And so, again, doesn't hurt humans, but we forget that humans have this relationship with all these little bugs.
Well, it's like a system, right? Like, people talk about like the microbiome in the stomach.
It's all the same.
Extremely important. It is. I mean, one can make a very strong argument that it is part of the human. Is this sort of cooperative collection of different species. I don't know if species is the right word, or different.
There's way more DNA that doesn't belong to us living in our bodies than DNA that belongs to us.
Yeah.
Again, you get back to sort of this, it's kind of intuitive, right? So why did they get here? How did they get here? I don't need to answer those questions to tell you that they're here.
Yeah, it just is. And
they wouldn't be here if there weren't some, overarching crazy reason why. I have a funny hypothesis that I've thrown out to the folks over at the Dark Horse podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with Brett Weinstein, Heather Hine.
Mm-hmm.
Love them. Evolutionary biologists. So I got poison ivy. Bad case of poison ivy about 6-7 months ago. I'm around that stuff all the time. But I had, long story short, I had gotten tick bites, about 3 or 4 tick bites over the course of about a week, and went to see the doctor. I was like, this one's a little red. And so he prescribed a fairly aggressive antibiotic protocol for me, just to make sure Lyme disease didn't happen to rear its ugly head, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm about 10, 12 days into this 21-day prescription. Again, I'm around poison ivy all the time. Never get it. And all of a sudden, crops up like all over me. And so I'm taking this antibiotic orally, but I've got this microbiome living on my skin, protecting me from the sun, we don't know, Marty, but it's there. Mm-hmm. And I had this like epiphany. I'm like, I wonder if we as a species have co-evolved to live with these bugs. And if you think about like natural, occurring in nature, noxious things, there aren't many. I mean, you got rotting, flesh and this, but from a plant standpoint, I mean, there's lots of noxious plants, but in terms of just our ability to be in contact with these plants, I'm thinking, well, of course, over hundreds of thousands of years, we would have maintained a healthy relationship with something on our skin that helps prevent this oil, because that's all it is: poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac. It's an oil from the plant. Well, maybe I removed the protective layer, and allowed that in. I don't know. It's food for thought.
It's a very compelling hypothesis, because that's I've never had poison ivy before, and I'm pretty sure I've come into contact with it. Like my son on the Ladybird Trail here in Austin, we walk that quite often, and they have signs like poison ivy, and my son's about to be 3. And he's at the point where we let him out and like run around, and he has no concept of what poison ivy is, so he'll like run up in the brush. We're always like, oh, you're gonna get poison ivy. He never does though. No.
That's good.
Yeah, because some people are naturally averse to actually getting it, and other people are more inclined to get it as well.
Oh yeah, humans are fun because there's always a spectrum, and you know, we spend most of our time on the extremes of every spectrum in terms of that's how we view the world is on the extreme. So you either super allergic or you don't get it. But
well, that actually is a good segue into like bringing this back to like regenerative farming and fixing the topsoil. That's one of the, I mean, regenerative farming has been a big growing movement over the last 5-10 years, and I think more people are becoming aware of the fact that it is probably an ideal way to steward the land that we're using to feed our local communities. But the one knock is that it's not scalable. Would you say that's true?
Well, you know, you got to start defining your terms, right? What does scalable mean? I would point your listener to the work of the Savory Institute and Allan Savory. White Oak Pastures happens to be a Savory hub, and we have this mindset. We have this idea that it's our responsibility to feed the world, and that is bullshit. You know, the world was doing just fine, you know, a couple hundred years ago, and certainly longer ago. But you know, when did it become the South Georgia peanut farmers' responsibility to grow peanuts for the entire country, or or Taiwan or Germany? You know, I don't buy into any of that. I do believe that the way that farms like White Oak, Polyface farm, I do believe it's scalable to a point. But more importantly, it's repeatable. Mm-hmm. You know, Microsoft is scalable, but not repeatable.
Yep.
And you know, one thing, and we're living through this now, specifically around our food supply. One thing that we've handed the keys to the food production castle to a very few players. I mean, I think with meat in this country, there's 5 companies that control 85% of the meat that we eat. And when you do that, when you concentrate that much, you know, if a cog in the wheel gets screwed up, you know, you got serious problems.
And we found that out in the last.
And we
years.
found that out, absolutely. So you know, take your Will Harris White Oak Pastures as an example. You know, you could drop 2 or 3 White Oak Pastures into every state in the country at their scale, at their size, at their ability to serve the consumer. You know, part of White Oak Pastures' problem, and all of the problem is, why are they shipping food to California? Mm-hmm. They shouldn't be.
No.
You know, and again, I'll just use them as an example. You know, they're 3 hours south of Atlanta. Population, good God, 5, 6, 7, 10 million, depending on where you want to draw the line. White Oak's 22 $25 million a year top line revenue company. I know Will and them very well. I've known him for years, and I'm not saying anything out of sorts. I mean, he's talked publicly about this, but the point is, how in the hell why is he shipping to California when you've got 10 million people that live 3 hours up the road? Right. And so you take that, it's duplicatable, scalable to a point. I can't envision what the next step above like a White Oak would be, because they've got their own, for your listener that doesn't know, they raise it, tens of thousands of different animals, beef, pork, poultry. They've got their own on-farm USDA red meat and poultry slaughterhouse. Again, for your listener, if you're going to sell meat by the cut to a consumer, it's got to have a USDA stamp on it. There's some workarounds for that, but at a micro scale, if you're going to be as big as White Oak, you got to have the USDA stamp, right? Which is another one of these government requirements.
Perturbing the market.
Yep. Got to control the supply side. I'll tell you a quick funny story. So early in the pandemic, this is White Oak Pastures. They grow meat and feed their community, but they're USDA. And so early in the pandemic, it was government employees don't show up to work. We gotta
flatten the curve.
Let's flatten that damn curve, y'all. Well, if you don't have a USDA inspector in your USDA plant to check the USDA box,
can't sell any beef.
You're not moving any. You're not moving any product today. You can't slaughter. Most of the USDA regulations are around slaughter and evisceration. Past that into the butchering side of the house, you get into food safety. Mm-hmm. But the big control, the big lever with USDA is that slaughter and evisceration. Anyway, but yeah. So if the USDA is telling their employees that you're not to go to work today, then no food. And so anyway, early on, I remember talking to Mr. Harris about, I had to pick up the phone and call the governor and be like, not so fast, my friend. And, and it happened. The inspectors came back to work. But, it's that kind of shit that just drives you nuts.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, you drop a White Oak Pastures, you could probably have a dozen White Oak Pastures in Texas, man.
Oh,
you could have one north of Austin, one south of Austin. Again, I mean, what's your average family of 4 spend on meat a year? Whatever that number is. Multiply that by 1,000 families and, work backwards.
Yeah.
So.
Well, another thing to highlight too is the topsoil problem and conversations going on. Like you said, by 2060, a lot of studies are predicting there won't be any more topsoil, and people immediately go to a state of fear and desperation. But I think that's one thing about regenerative farming, that it shows that within a relatively short amount of time, you can begin to heal the soil. So,
well, back to the technology piece. Like we had, this has been proven out. Salatin's done it. Will Harris is doing it. There's a bunch of people doing this at micro scales, but with the technology we have at our hands and disposal now, you can accelerate these natural systems in a very healthy way. Nature's really good about not getting over its skis, mm-hmm. right? It'll take that accelerated impact, it'll take that accelerated nurturing up to a point, but then it'll give you very clear signals. Too fast, too much. You just got to listen. Here's another one, Marty. 75% roughly of the agricultural land in this country is what's considered marginal land. You know what that term means?
I have an idea, but I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so marginal land from an agricultural standpoint means you can't plow it. So it's either too hilly, too rocky, too this, too that. You can't plant grains on it. That's what marginal agricultural land in this country is. Well, what can you put on it?
Legally or physically? Like, is it just like a government, like this is designated as marginal land, so you can't farm on it, or is it just
it's a term
farmers recognize they're like,
yeah.
we're not going to grow here because it's marginal land? It's not.
Well, again, back to a bunch of different factors. So look at the farm subsidy system in this country and where we put most of our government dollars. It's all grain production. So why is marginal versus arable? Arable is the opposite of marginal. Arable means I can run a plow through it. It's deep soils. I can do all the things. The big difference between those is where does the government point its money? Where it can grow the products that it promotes: soy, corn, wheat, oats, right? Here's a funny aside. You're familiar with the food pyramid, yes?
Yes. They just redid it too.
They did. Frosted mini wheats are apparently healthier than
eggs and
beef. And beef, and yeah. So
clown. It's insane that we're sitting in 2023 and they're still trying to force that food pyramid narrative down people's throats.
Well, we're 2.5 years into the largest genomic
PSYOP on the planet.
PSYOP experiment, and the data's already clear, and yet they're still pimping that. So, we hold on to those sacred cows hard and fast. But no, this is again, I love the intuitive side of this. So, in a world where you have the Food and Drug Administration, okay, who writes the policy? Who tells us what to eat? Where did the food pyramid come from?
Lobbyists.
Who publishes it?
The government, right?
Which section?
The USDA or the FDA?
Not the Food and Drug Administration. Mm-hmm. Our healthcare policy in this country is written by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. What do we grow? Corn, wheat, soy. So the people holding the keys to our nutritional guidance are also the people holding the keys to corn, wheat, and soy production. And we're really good at it.
Yeah.
So
it's also destroying.
Oh, for sure.
Or metabolic health.
Well, here's another fun one. So about 3/4 of the grains grown in this country are grown to feed cattle. Cattle prefer grass. They're not even biologically able to assimilate grain.
Even with all their stomachs.
Even with all those stomachs and the rumen and everything else. They don't like it. It makes them sick. It's hypercaloric. So it fattens them up quick.
Yeah.
But so, sort of circle back around to, I think you could drop a White Oak Pastures almost anywhere. I think you could drop a Polyface Farms almost anywhere. The food, again, they hold the keys to the castle. You want to buy a steak from me? It's got to have this stamp on it. And, for the people I know that have had success, if you want to call it that, in sort of like a private membership association, so you can sort of circumvent some of these rules.
Yeah, the Amish do this in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. Well, and we had that case recently in Pennsylvania where, the guy
listeria stuff with the raw milk.
All the things.
If you look into that story too, it goes back to like 2016.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a woman had bought raw milk from this farm. I forget the name of it. It was in Lancaster somewhere. And then went back to her house in Florida and died of listeria. But they were never able to like directly correlate the milk to the listeria. And she was also like 96 years old.
Yeah, but she's a poster child for you gotta pasteurize and homogenize and.
I mean, it's become a meme on Rabbit Hole Recap with Matt. Matt said once, like, it was never raw milk; it was just milk for thousands of years.
Well, again, this back to intuition. I look at people, I'm like, if raw milk were bad, none of us would be here.
Right?
If eating meat were bad, none of us would be here. eggs. That's the best one. You look at the 40 or 50 year track record of eggs. It's like, look at the cover of Time magazine over every decade. It's like, eat them, don't eat them, eat them but only twice. Can't get enough.
Don't eat the yolks.
Don't eat the yolks. Oh, that's the favorite one. Don't eat the most nutritionally dense part of this thing that is almost a perfect food. Like you could literally live off of eggs.
Raw eggs.
Oh, for sure.
It's been a big theme here in the Commons. We have, we have eggs
slugging them down.
Egg slonking meetings.
Slonking, yes.
Yeah, we slonk some eggs back in the kitchen.
I appreciate that, Marty.
Yeah, it's hilarious. You have this whole like egg white omelet movement where people are like, oh, you can't eat the yolks, but I'll eat the whites. And it's like, you're not getting any.
Well, yeah. So that started gaining traction. We're again the vilification of saturated fat, and the most frustrating thing, especially about dietary policy, is the cheating that Ansel Keys did. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Ansel Keys is sort of the godfather of saturated fat vilification. So he did this huge meta study on a bunch of countries, and then threw out the ones that didn't. There were two prevailing theories. You may have covered this with your other guests, but there were two prevailing theories way back when, which was heart disease is caused by either sugar or fat, sugar or saturated fat, sugar or saturated fat, and so. This is all in the historical record. You can pull this out. You can look this up. You can put your fingers directly to all of the lobbying and paid off scientists by the sugar lobby to vilify saturated fat. This is all documented. In fact, it looks a whole lot like the same lobbying that Big Tobacco had, only decades prior, in terms of it's not that bad for you. It's actually good for you. And 3 out of 4 doctors smoke Newports when you're pregnant because the menthol helps with your breathing. It's just, you can look all this up. So anyway, yeah. So in the 70s, 80s, you see this massive vilification, and we get fat phobic. Fat phobic, and if you take the fat out of food,
not fat people phobic, but
not fat
nutritionally,
yes, dietarily fat phobic, and even back to the origin story of Crisco. Crisco, I'm a lard guy, right? When I got into this, one of the things I eventually did was sort of go down the rabbit hole of how do we get here, and. The Procter & Gamble story. So I had always assumed, I had this background in sort of paleo and nutrition. I pointed that what to eat, what not to eat lens over here on skincare, right? And so I had always thought that seed oils and all these refined oils were naturally manifested through food. Turns out it was actually skincare and soap. And Procter & Gamble at the turn of the century started making soap and candles out of cottonseed oil. They figured out how to make it non-toxic-ish, and so they bought a bunch of mills in Texas, ironically, and scaled up their cottonseed oil manufacturing capability, and then all of a sudden candles and soap. Turn of the century, electricity comes along. Light bulb, candle sales aren't looking so hot. So they team up with a German scientist, figured out how to hydrogenate this cottonseed oil, and convince the world that it's better for you than the predominant cooking oil of the time, which was lard.
And beef tallow, right?
And tallow, but lard was
the go-to.
The lard works in mysterious ways, Marty. And
that's funny because I'm a 90s kid, and I've it's funny how like this seeped into pop culture, like Rugrats. Stu, the dad, he was a lard salesman, and I
didn't know that.
And he had a tough life because like lard was so
hard to sell.
It was so hard to sell, but like that was like he was like a lard salesman that had a really tough job because lard was so
I did not know
demonized
that
at the time.
I have my one of my closest cousins is sort of a antiquer, very, very good eye, gifted antiquer, and they have collected countless old lard tins, and I've got pictures upon pictures. They find them everywhere. 120 pounds of lard in one vessel, right? So lard is white. Lard is for your listeners, lard is the rendered back / belly, ergo subcutaneous fat of a pig. And so belly fat, back fat. We have effectively two types of fat in our body for people that don't understand this. Subcutaneous fat, which is belly fat, back fat. It's just under the skin. And then we have visceral fat. So fat that is there for padding internally. This is kidney fat. Beef tallow is rendered kidney fat from a bovine species. But anyway, yeah, lard is white. Crisco is not. They bleach it or color it white because they were literally competing with lard. And again, I've got all these old, people, that's what you did. You went to the store and you bought a 5-gallon bucket of lard. And
spoon in.
And just spoon it out.
Pan.
Get after it, man. Get after it.
Yeah, there's this incredible clip of Julia Childs. It's funny. It's like we get back to like the food pyramid. They just updated it. And you have Rachel Levine, who's like the head of the healthcare system of the United States, or the health czar, whatever the title is. Looks like shit, coming out and telling you like this is what you freaks need to eat. And
there's a bunch of memes that float around. I think the minister of health in the Netherlands is like a 450-pound.
Well, it's like it's a whole don't believe your lying eyes situation where you have all these unhealthy people telling you like, no, Lucky Charms are better than eggs and steak. And then you go back to like the Julia Childs clip. It's an incredible clip because I think it was in the 80s or early 90s when McDonald's shifted their frying from beef tallow to seed
94,
oils.
92, 94, somewhere there.
Yeah.
Hell, I grew up on McDonald's, man.
Yeah. And
those fries are delicious.
But it's this clip. She's like, I'm never eating McDonald's again.
Oh.
They went from beef tallow to seed oils, and the fry tastes worse. It's not as crisp as it used to be, and it's probably not as healthy. She said that as well. And like, she's a preeminent chef who's been working with food, knows what good taste is, good nutrition is, and for some reason or another, we've just been psyoped into cooking with these poisons that are killing us.
Sure. Well, again, back to the intuitive nature of animal fat for our skin. It's, I can sit here and tell you, well, it makes sense to me, but I've also sort of ejected myself. The paleo journey for me was really interesting because you get behind the curtain of looking at what's projected on the public, the food pyramid, and sugar free, high fructose corn syrup that's way better than sugar, and then artificial sweeteners are even better than that. And you just think, well, intuitively, no. But anyway, sort of you get behind the curtain and you see that, and of course now skincare, marketing's a powerful thing.
It is, and it's so ingrained. Like I think Slim and I have talked about this before, but just like the marketing in a supermarket, like all the colors, like the cartoons on the cereal boxes, and where things get placed in a supermarket makes people more likely to buy them. But then going back to like the trends changing, I do think I have hope in the mothers of the world, particularly my wife. Shout out to my wife, love you, baby. She came back from the grocery store last week and like cheered when she walked in the door. She's like, I got everything in our weekly grocery run.
Nice.
Nothing has seed oils. Like their moms are beginning to come attuned to this.
Can I hit the head? How does this work?
You can hit the head.
All right, I got to do that.
Okay.
You're okay?
You hit the head.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
I'm back, Marty.
Feeling relieved?
it's one of the things that travel really screws me up with. I've got a really good routine at home in terms of like coffee entering the body at this time.
Yes.
This amount of water consumption by this time.
Yeah, the traveling messes me up a lot.
Yeah.
I have to travel a lot. I do not love it.
And I'm sort of an obliger by nature, so I'll sit here and hold it and hold it.
Don't ever feel compelled to hold it, okay? If you got to go, you got to go.
I'm holding nothing back with you today, Marty.
We're talking about nature. When nature calls, you gotta...
Absolutely. Absolutely. So nature called, and I answered, and I appreciate your understanding.
No, it's like I was telling you, we've been potty training. So I've been very intimately involved with nature's calling over the last 3 days. It's been an experience.
How old?
Almost 3.
Okay, yeah,
maybe a little late on the potty training, but we're getting there.
What I discovered with Scott, he's 10 now. The best way to potty train him is just to send him to the bathroom with some young kids that are already potty trained. Let them watch. It's like, oh, I want to be like the cool kids.
Yeah, the peer pressure.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's today's his first day at school with the potty training wheels half off. So we'll see how it goes.
That is exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So gentle enough for the kids, by the way. The Farrow, the lard.
I want to be lathering them up.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of kids, that's what, before you hit the head, that's what I was talking about, was I'm extremely optimistic. Like a lot of the topics that we cover on this, whether it be like monetary policy, state of global economic landscape, privacy in the digital age, like it all in 2023 seems to be coalescing in this weird dystopian nightmare. But we do have to highlight like the optimistic trends that exist, highlight them, and try to hold them up and amplify them. That was right before you hit the head. That's what I was saying. I was like, I think there is something naturally occurring in the mothers of the world that exist out there, at least some of them, that are beginning to realize, like, looking at their children. Like, I know my wife's looking at her 2 boys, like, what the hell am I feeding you? What am I putting in your body? How's it affecting your temper from a day-to-day experience? And it's one thing my wife has taken the ball and run with, like cutting seed oils out and cooking at home and trying to make it so like the kids are eating healthy.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's, I've got 8 and 10 daughters, the 8-year-old, and they're a big part of the muse. So I took this lens of, if you can't eat it, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. Don't eat preserved foods. It's not good for us. Blah 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 blah. You take that lens and you shine it over on skincare, and it's like, what the? I mean, it's bad. It's actually worse than food, because we don't perceive that our skin eats things, right? So again, back to this consumer protection, but yeah, I mean, the mama bears are standing up and speaking up, and one of the silver linings. JP Sears was one of the closing deals with. I love JP's work. He was one of the closing acts at this conference I've been in town for, and he's talking about like having gratitude for the World Economic Forum, or having finding the silver linings and all that. And one of the silver linings to all this madness for the past 2 or 3 years is it's woken a lot of people up. And again, I've said I took this lens over here in the food world and all of a sudden shined it on skincare. Well, now shine that same lens on Big Pharma, shine that same lens on the Fed, just the list goes on and on and on. People are waking up, and it's harder and harder to hide the truth now.
Especially when people are dying suddenly all over the place.
Yes, due to climate change, apparently.
Due to the cows. Oh, yeah, we just got to kill all the cows.
The cow farts are, causing heart attacks.
That was another thing. There was a clip that came out of the World Economic Forum last week, and I had the epiphany when I saw the clip. It was, I believe, the CEO of Siemens was telling a very very heart-wrenching story about how his daughter said you need to go vegan because the cows are destroying the world. And he basically went on this long rant. It was like, we need to stop eating meat to reduce CO2 emissions. And I had this epiphany where it's like the act of eating meat does not produce emissions. It is the front end of that supply chain, which is the cows actually living their lives. And so like if you take that statement, like we need to stop eating meat to reduce emissions, these people literally would have mass genocide all bovine creatures because they view them as the product of these emissions. And that's really what they're saying when you get to the crux of it.
We have a saying in the South, bless their hearts. And, you know, again, it's just back to what people know and what they think they know and what they've been talked into. I mean, you know, this lovely country that we inhabit had the records show that it had herds of bison that would make our current domesticated bovine population look very small,
minuscule.
Hundreds of millions of herbivorous ruminant species. When you add in the bison and the elk and the deer, we are at a fraction today the population of animals in this country that we were 500 years ago.
And it's funny when people first came here and they started moving west, the great frontier, would describe how beautiful it was, the landscape, how luscious it was. This roaming bison had something to do with it.
Well, so the Fertile Crescent in Africa, where humanity, you know, effectively was born, is a damn desert now. You know, this is, again, you got to think about these silver linings. Like, humans are destructive creatures, right? We're really good at cutting trees down and killing off animals. I mean, we've advanced as a species pretty well. We're winning, right? Well, that same capacity can be, there's an over application of the humans rape and pillage mindset. We also repair and build, and so, you know, what a blessing, these opposable thumbs and a developed prefrontal cortex and all the various things. Pigs can't sweat. I love pigs, but like, pigs don't sweat. We get to sweat, which means we get to do all these other cool things. I'm going crazy here tangentially, but we have the capacity to reverse a whole bunch of stuff.
Agreed. And
if we just farm correctly
and get out of this narrow framework that people like the U.S. federal government and those who are speaking and leading the World Economic Forum have put people into. They give you this weird binary option of it's this way or that way. And I think that's why I like sitting down talking to people like you is like, maybe it doesn't need to be either of those options. Maybe we just think differently about how we're producing food, how we're regenerating land, using grazing cattle to green areas. Like you talk about the Fertile Crescent. That was like probably one of the only good TED Talks I've ever watched was, I forget his name, but he was in like 2012, 2013, being like, hey, if you want to solve climate change, like we need to begin roaming herds of cattle.
That
like,
might be Allan Savory.
It might have been.
I think 2012 sounds about right. His TED Talk, and it's one of the, still to this day, one of the most downloaded TED Talks of all time.
Yeah, and you had because what was so powerful about that was the pictures. It's like, look, this was a desert. I brought in some roaming bovine creatures, and it greened up within a couple of years.
His story is so unbelievably tragic. I don't know if you know his backstory. So he was basically an effective African fish and wildlife kind of person, and they were seeing desertification. So the desert was getting bigger, and looks around, sees all these elephants, and as a young environmental protector, he draws the conclusion that it must be the elephants eating the grass that are causing this desert expansion. And so he was part of a team that came to an ultimate decision. I forget how many thousands of elephants they culled, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
I think this was actually part of his TED Talk.
It was, but it's just, it shows his journey is powerful, because it's like, let me go do this. This is going to fix the problem. Problem got worse. Oh, and now I've got these, I think it was like 10,000 elephants they culled, right? So I've got the death of these 10,000 creatures on my resume, and it got worse.
Yeah.
And so, no, Allan Savory is the Savory Institute. They're doing great work.
Good on him for course correcting. Yeah,
oh, hell yeah.
It's a rare trait.
The ego is tough to,
right? Like
humble pie is not tasty.
No, because sunk cost fallacy comes into play. You're like, oh no, I banked my career on this. Like, it has to be right. And then those people will try to find data that supports the hypothesis that they put forth. A lot of that's going on right now.
Well, you start with what do we want to know? What do we want to prove?
Yes.
This is the answer we want, and then you work backwards.
Yeah. Individuals like Allan are able to actually be upfront and confront the fact that they were wrong and recognize that they were wrong, and then try to course correct from there. We need more of those humans in the world.
Sure.
Especially today. I mean, what's going on with economic policy, food policy, the COVID policy. A lot of people just double, triple, quadruple down. Like, no, we were right.
I really enjoy your show, and you know, I'm fairly new to the Bitcoin space. We take it now for our products online, which is really cool. But I have a lot to learn. I recognize its importance. That's why we're sort of taking it, you know, leveraging it as a means for payment. But man, like getting to know you and Slim and Adam Curry and some of the other folks even Odell and y'all say this all the time, but fix the money, fix the food, right? I'm going to say fix the money, fix a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like fix the skincare, you know. Why are preservatives and chemicals and seed oils so prevalent in our cosmetics market? Well, maybe it's because we make them unbelievably cheap because we print money and give it to farmers, and you know, whether they grow good corn or bad corn or good wheat or good wheat. We do the same thing with all these petroleum, you know, there's just this system this fiat system that's set up to incentivize crap.
Yes.
Like non-efficient. I mean, hell, without farm subsidies, I don't think anyone would grow corn in this country.
Yeah. Maybe like South Jersey, just because you get that sweet corn, but.
Well, when I say corn, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't, and you know, again, just back to the ass backwardness of the system. We spend more fossil fuels growing corn to make ethanol to put into gas than we save in the carbon emissions from the ethanol that goes in the gas.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It's a negative feedback loop of insanity.
Yeah.
Insanity. So.
Yeah. No, we have it out here. Fix the money, fix the world.
Yes.
I truly believe that people think we're crazy, part of a cult. But I do think a lot of this stems from perverse incentives introduced by easy money.
Cults, short for culture, man. They can be, you know, that's the beauty of waking up a little bit. Not woke, but awake, is you understand that there's two sides to every pillow. You know, there's two sides to every coin. And so, you know, it's like pigs. Pigs, I love pigs. Pigs get a bad rap because they're destructive. Well, leverage the destruction, you know. Destruction's what the soil needs. It's what disturbance. We like to say disturbance, not destruction, you know, because there's a fine line. And so again, you know, cults are awesome.
Yeah.
Cults are also really terrible. So which side of that coin you want to be?
Yeah, you gotta pick the right cult. I think I picked the right colt. Then we go back to like pigs being not destructive but disturbing. Like one of my partners, a standard Bitcoin, he actually owns a farm in northern Tennessee, and the last time I was there, he was excited because they were getting a mama pig and some piglets the week after I left, but it was literally just to plop them down by like the edges of his farm so they could run through all the brush and just clear it out.
Pigs are amazingly impactful to the land, and so again, you want to harness that and also use it wisely. You know, for your listeners, a lot of people I know at least what backyard chickens are like. You know, I have a different circle than most of the world, but at my age, a lot of people can reminisce about the chicken coop they had behind their house. And if you know anything about a chicken coop, even the one I grew up around, when you walked in the chicken coop, there was no grass. It was deadpan dirt, and you go get the eggs every day. Well, chickens are highly destructive. Mm-hmm. And if you leave them one place for very long, they're going to eat everything. And then you got a moonscape. And so even poultry production, animals move. They don't spend very much time in the same place. And so leverage all that, stack it all up. And
no, that's why I think it's very important. The things that you're doing, Allan Savory, Will Harris, and others in this movie is educating people about things that are relatively simple. Like once you understand the base concepts of this, like, oh, you like fence cows into like a certain square to eat all the grass. They eat all of it. You move that square into another one. They move to that. They eat all of it. They poop while they're eating, and it adds to the soil. It's very intuitive.
Well, yeah, and you know, again, back to the leverage, right? Back to using these gifts we've got. You know, in nature, you're looking at like a one-time pass, right? So here come the bison. They eat the grass. They pee, they poo, they move on. Well, a month and a half, 2 months later, that grass is back, and it's ready to go again. But the bison, you know, in a natural setting, many times the bison have moved on. They're on to the next grass. So in our systems, again, we're able to responsibly push the gas and push the brake on ecology building. It's truly remarkable. I mean, you know, again, measure it by topsoil, measure it by carbon content in the soil, measure it by the microbial. You know, every percent, every 1% increase in organic matter in the soil, you have an increased carrying capacity per acre of water of like 23,000 gallons.
Holy shit.
Right. Because organic matter needs water, and it binds to it and it holds on to it. And so, you know, when we plow, you know, back to arable versus marginal land, when we break the soil surface with a plow, we open the bare soil up to the sun. You know, that sun gets really hot. It kills all the organic matter. You know, the soils surrounding, as an example, Will Harris, we've talked about him quite a bit today. The soils surrounding his farm, from the peanut farmers and the soy farmers, you know, are averaging like 0.5 to 1% organic matter. So you get a, you know, 2, 3, 4 inch deluge of rain over the course of a day or two.
It all flooded out.
It runs off. That was one of the videos we were talking about earlier. It runs off. Well, again, think about that's a 1/2 inch of rain. 20, I think that's right. It's either an inch or a 1/2 inch of rain. 22,000 gallons per acre. I can't remember, but either way, it's a lot of damn water. So every incremental increase in organic matter, the water stays there.
You can absorb it.
It absorbs. There's a whole new thread coming out now. I think the Meat Mafia guys just interviewed a guy, or maybe they're about to, on beavers and the impact of beavers to our environment. that's a little far afield from our cows and pigs conversation, but just how we relate to the water system in this country.
Go back to wolves. There's that famous video that's like very viral. It's been around for years, but reintroducing wolves to Yosemite Park, and it completely changed the landscape of the land, because you had
forced the herbivores, the elk and deer, forced them to reacquaint themselves with the natural systems, which was, you can eat down here right now, but you better get your ass back up that hill. Otherwise,
you're getting hunted.
And so they didn't overgraze all the lands and the grasses holding up the banks of these rivers. For your listeners that don't understand how this works, ruminant species, elk, deer, cows, sheep, these are all ruminant species. They graze on grass. And where's the tastiest grass grow? Right down by the riverbanks. And if there's no predator, aka wolf, to keep them from just hanging out there all damn day eating grass until the grass dies. We talked earlier about the symbiosis, right? You eat that 3-foot plant down to a 1 foot, and it breaks everything off and regrows and all that. Well, if 2 days later you come back to that 1 foot, 1 inch tall plant and you eat 6 inches off of it, you've effectively killed the plant. Mm-hmm. So this is the power of overgrazing. And so these wolves come into the park. The river had been, altered forever because the grasses have roots that hold the banks together. No grass, no roots, no banks. And so in a matter of very short order, they started reestablishing the banks of this river because grasses were actually able to grow. Here's an even better one for you. Where's the richest grass? Down by the river. Mm-hmm. How do nutrients, soil nutrients, cycle back uphill? Gravity ain't going to happen, right? So here's this symbiotic role of these herbivore or herbivorous species. So I spend a little bit of time down in the valley eating the lush, nutrient-dense grass. Along comes the wolves. I better get my ass up the hill. So I'm going to eat. I'm going to head uphill.
Take a dump.
I'm going to take a dump and a pee at the top of the hill. So they're cycling nutrients back uphill. The rains come and bring those nutrients back down. You got this again.
It's literally the circle of life.
It's beautiful, man. We talked about it early on. We take this little snapshot of methane coming out the butthole of a cow, and all of a sudden that's a problem.
We got to kill all the cows.
We got to kill all the cows because they're emitting methane. Did you know that your average everyday run-of-the-mill dozen oysters emits as much methane into the air as carbon?
I did not know that.
They're not protesting oysters, Rockefeller.
I hope they don't. I love oysters.
Oysters are.
I did not know this.
If you're slogging oysters with eggs, slonking. Excuse me. I always say slogging.
Slonk.
Yeah.
Tomato.
Yeah. That's some magic sauce there.
Raw
oysters and raw eggs, just knocking them back.
Yeah. That's oysters are a superfood.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell myself I'll never eat seafood more than 100 miles from the coast, but even down here in Central Texas, I cave and eat oysters quite often.
Well, again, Farrow works because we figured out the logistics. You can get. I'd love to see more local. I'd love to be more centralized. White Oak Pastures doesn't need to be shipping food to Washington State, right? But someone in Washington State, if you really want to order Farrow, I'll ship it to you with no regrets. But
I was just going to check time.
But we figured out the logistics, right? And so seafood, you can get really fresh seafood.
I know.
Pretty much anywhere in the country.
I know. So. Yeah. There's a little. I'm used to growing up right on the coast where it comes right in.
That's my mom's from Mobile, and so I have fond memories of fresh.
Yeah, when we lived in South Carolina, in the back bays, you used to just go put your hand in the muck, pull out a bunch of oysters, shuck them, go shrimping back there. Literally from the back bay to your plate.
Oh, it's fantastic, man. Yeah. I mean, farming's that same thing for me. There's this reverence. It's a little bit different, I think, fishing and acquiring not cultivating as much in the aquatic.
They're doing it with the oysters now, aren't they?
They are.
Oyster farms.
They are. Absolutely. But there's a connection that comes with raising them, you know.
Yeah.
People always ask, like, how can you raise this animal and then take its life? And it's like, it's hard. There's a reverence. I mean, so many people are disconnected from food now. They don't appreciate that. Go hug a damn farmer. It's not fun and reward. And it's very rewarding. It's not a lot of fun all the time. And but there's a reverence there. Our pigs, our chickens, our cows have one bad day. One bad day, and the rest of their life is full and filled and we absolutely, Farrow is an offshoot of really honoring that sacrifice. I mean, it's a waste product in many respects. Part of the reason being that we've moved away from animal-based oils and for cooking and various other things and moved into these, cheap, ubiquitous, government-sponsored, fiat-supported commodities.
Poisons.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think you're right.
Seed oils literally affect people's genetic makeup.
No, it's awful. It's awful.
Yeah. No, it's like you're respecting the animal. Right? I mean, you hear the phrase like tail to nose, nose to tail. I mean, you're taking the fat byproduct and making
oh,
so
that's
people
great.
can use it.
Yep.
So this has been a fascinating conversation. Where can people find out more about Farrow?
Our website, Farrow, FARROW.life is our website. Got an FAQ section, everything on there, to the best of my abilities. And we're still small. This is our first year in business. We just rolled over 12 months, and things are going pretty well. So thank you to everyone that considers giving the lard cream a try.
What is your go-to response to the person that says, "I'm not putting lard on my face"?
Okay. You're missing
pusher.
out, bro. We say it. It's our tagline. The lard works in mysterious ways. I don't know what the orange pill stuff is. I'm trying to lard pill people, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
No.
And so I will tell you, I had a milestone this weekend before we close off. I had a first milestone this weekend. I had a woman come up to me at this conference, Susan, no last names. I don't want to out her to her friends, but she comes up and she's like, right, matter-of-factly, so I'm a vegan, right? And I want you to tell me about your product. And I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And for those of you that don't know what a vegan is, they're not big into the animal.
They don't only not eat animal products. They don't wear them. They don't. They don't contribute to the death of really, really furry, cute animals called cows, pigs, and chickens. They don't like those animals dying. They're okay with mice and snakes and birds and crickets and all these other things dying to grow soy and corn. Anyway, I sold my first Farrow to a vegan this weekend, and we hugged it out, and she loved the story, and she was very excited about the honor that we show these animals because we're nose to tail. I'm not going to stop eating pork, and so I had pork ragu for dinner last night.
You're a wise man. You're a wise man. I love pigs, man. They're my favorite farm animal. I mean, I love chickens. I love cows. Pigs are like omnivorous and gregarious, like everything's a potential meal, and so they're always curious. They're smart as hell.
Well, it's crazy, like when they become undomesticated out into the wild, their physiology literally changes too.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. They say, so pigs are, this is why pigs are a problem in Texas. So pigs, the gestation for a pig is 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. And so Mama Sow can get pregnant and have 3 litters a year.
Yeah.
And they've taken pigs They've taken wild pigs, put them in captivity, and 2 generations later, they're domesticated. They've taken domesticated pigs, put them back in the wild, and a generation or 2 later, they're back to long hair, big fang, tusks, and the whole 9 yards. It's crazy. They're an amazing species.
Very dynamic.
Unbelievable. One could argue almost as adaptable as humans to the environment. It's a blessing for us that we're so adaptable. I think we've reached nutritionally and skin care wise and environment. I think we've reached a tipping point with we're a resilient species, but goddamn, man, we're pushing it pretty hard now. All the seed oils, all the, toxins, all the BPAs, all the this, all of that, and with a shitty diet and a toxic environment and a fiat money. We're at the tipping point. So
yeah, and then you had all the mental, the dopamine hits from social media and attention spans. It does show that humans are extremely resilient as well, despite the fact that we have gotten extremely fat from eating all this stuff. But it does seem like people are waking up, and even with the onslaught of the digital age, we are adapting. Maybe not incredibly well in most people's minds, but I do have faith that we'll figure it out.
Totally agree, Marty. Again, there's 2 sides to every coin, right? Technology, handheld devices, amazing technology and power in our hand. Also, a place where you can waste your entire goddamn day looking at stuff that is designed to get you addicted to looking at it, right? The gatekeepers never understand as much as the developers. Big food knows way more about how to get your palate addicted to stuff than big food regulators. Big social media, big tech knows way more about how your brain works than people regulating. Now that's a revolving door more and more now, but yeah, we're just the hyperpalatability of our entire environment, media, food, skincare. Again, I'm still scratching the surface on understanding this. Would it surprise me that there are scientists at Clinique or any of these big cosmetics retailers that are designing chemical scents in their products that are highly addictive based on their understanding of our olfactory system and how our brain works? Of course they are. They're doing it with food.
Pheromones and stuff like that.
No, of course.
Yeah.
So
beware, freaks. Stuff's going on.
This has been fun, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on such short notice. We threw this together, Thursday or Friday?
Oh, man, got to ready, shoot, aim, right?
No, I think I certainly learned a lot. I hope anybody listening did as well. It's an incredible story from sunburn to skin products.
Yeah, man.
Solving your own problem. That's when some of the best products come out of.
Absolutely. Listen, I've enjoyed our interactions. This is the second time we've met in person, and we've got a bunch of mutual friends, and I applaud and appreciate everything you guys are doing to spread messages about farming and diet and sound money and all the things, man.
It's a team effort. The feeling is mutual. Thank you for doing what you're doing to educate, get these products out there. You can read every ingredient on these skincare products. You know exactly what they are. You're not going to get any methine or the dieptra, whatever. I can't even.
Tetra, blah, 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 blah. I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, you can read this.
You can read it, and I've said from the very beginning, so you'll appreciate this. I'm the only lard guy in town, right? And so early on, we were trying to figure out the branding and all of this, and I had a team, and there was that moment where the team was like, "Are you sure you want to
be the lard guy?
Be the put we have to put it on the ingredients, but do we have to tell people?" I was like, we're leading with lard, complete transparency, embrace it. But what I've said from the beginning, and again, for your listeners, I know you've tried it before. This shit works. And the one thing I sort of hang my hat on with regards to cosmetics is how damn vain we are. And I know a lot of people, when they find something that works, it doesn't matter. They're in.
Yeah.
And so I know it works. I stand by it. We're going to lead with lard. We're going to talk about the pigs. We're going to highlight how amazing they are. We're going to hope the vegans actually come after us, because no press is bad press when it comes to stuff like that. You know, come on, bring it on. I'll have a conversation about real animal husbandry and you know.
Well, it seems like you're able to turn them, so bring them on. It's a good sales funnel.
You freaking mental, man. You freaking mental day. I was on cloud nine the rest of the day. I'd see Susan at the conference. I'd come and give her a big hug. I was like, I can't wait to hear about this from you. So
she'll be tweeting about it in a week.
Damn right.
Skin's never been better. Charles, it's been a pleasure.
Marty, thank you.
Safe travels back to Tennessee. That's all we got today, freaks. Peace and love. Tiki!